Hey everybody, welcome back to our ThinkScript webcast. My name is Mike Fairborn. Good to see you all today. Here we are. Happy Friday to all of you. We're almost there. We've got a class to go through. Excited to get through it as well. I want to talk about some sectors today, and specifically I want to tie in actually a little bit onto the sectors and show you what's capable on the platform. Definitely incorporating ThinkScript, but also incorporating the component of volume profile combined with a sector analysis. I want to look at that. I want to also discuss today, we had a request previously, we looked at it a little bit last week, but that was on linear regression channels, what those linear regression channels do, and how we can get an indication of the linear regression channel breaking, prices breaking above that lower standard deviation line of linear regression, or through the midline, or bouncing off the top line and coming back down. And how can we scan for that? How can we also see that posted in a Market Watch column? So a few cool things to look at today. And look forward to getting into that with you all, folks. Welcome on down the line. We got plenty of you here. And we're joining the chat by my good friend, Brent Moores. So we'll dive into that again. And by the way, I have been working on some of those topic requests now. Next week, as I go through those, actually, I don't think we might not have class next week, but after that, I've actually been building those up. I've had these kind of sitting on the burner for a little bit, these discussions today, so I wanted to get through those with you first. But I am collecting those topics, just so you know. Definitely give Brent and I a follow on X if you haven't already. Mike Fairborn CS, Brent Moore CS. Love to have you on board. Okay, with that, let's hit some disclosures to get going. Good to see you all. Okay, quickly, the information here is for general information purposes only. It should not be considered an individualized recommendation or endorsement of any particular security, chart pattern, or investment strategy. Now, Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as the sole means of investment research. The Paper Money software application is for educational purposes only. Now, there is a point here on backtesting. Backtesting results presented are hypothetical, and there's no guarantee that the same strategy implemented today would produce similar results. Testing does involve risk, including the loss of principal. Past performance of any security strategy does not guarantee future results or success. And that should do it in terms of the disclosures. Now, getting back to this, just a breakdown here in terms of the steps to ThinkScripting. We've gone through this from time to time, but one of the key points I wanted to bring up today, and I kind of went through this again a little while ago as I was going through this and just saying, okay, we want to identify the goal. And today I wanted to look at a couple of different goals. One of those was around sector analysis. Sectors are so interesting because a lot of times stocks will move, they will be strengthened. It's kind of like the wind at your back versus the wind at your front, I guess you could say, a headwind. I face that from time to time when I'm out biking, and if I've got the tailwind on me, I can take a little jump and really fly through the air without hardly any work at all. Now, if I've got a headwind instead of the wind's in my face, I can pedal as hard as I can, even downhill. And as I'm taking a jump, I might get the front wheel off the ground a couple inches, depending upon the speed of the wind. And where I'm at, it's actually noted worldwide for a very heavily winded area, at least in my neck of the woods, the mountains where I'm at. A lot of hang gliding around there. I almost said skydiving. Now, that wouldn't be good with all that wind, but hang gliding is good for the wind. But okay, that was kind of a branch there, but sector analysis. What can we gain from sectors, and what can we visually see on the chart that would help us analyze an individual stock and see if a sector is going higher? That was the goal I wanted to look at. This has kind of been building for a while. It kind of ties into a few things, of my interest in the stuff that I teach as well. So I wanted to look at that because a lot of times if a sector, folks, is strong, if it's strong and it's extending up for a period of time, okay, when that happens, not every time, but a lot of times, that's due to strong fundamentals. I'm going to put it right on this guy's screen, okay? Strong fundamentals. It's not always easy to get an entire sector to go higher unless you've got like a fundamental driver. We actually have growth across the board. And the funny thing about it is when one company might report earnings, bam, you'll find another stock in the same sector or industry that will also aim to go higher. What I'm going to do is I'm going to specialize that sector. Are there ways to do that with ThinkScript? Well, I did find there were some approaches we can use. ThinkScript can be a little bit static here and there, but we were able to make that work so we can kind of design, if you will, our own sort of mini sector of what stocks are moving in the group. And we can use that as a reference point on maybe a stock that we're looking at. What does it look like? Is it showing strength, weakness, whatever the case might be? So that was kind of the goal. Wanted to give you a little bit of background on that. And then also had the same kind of an approach to linear regression, actually, the linear regression channel, what I want to talk about today. And we'll go into that in more detail, kind of as a part two of our discussion, but sharing, a few different scripts today, clearly to help in that regard, or at least to give some indications of what's going on. So we'll outline the steps of the script. We'll apply the Think script itself. So we'll visualize that. I do have those custom scripts, and they actually are really, really straightforward. They're very simple. And sometimes the simple ones, first of all, they're easy to understand, and they're just more versatile in the market. They're more durable in a sense. If you have so many different indicators, it can get really, really tricky. Then we talked about one last week that was not that tricky. There was just a dual indicator, right? A velocity and acceleration combined at the same time. That was our discussion last week. But this week is just going to be kind of very, very clear and straightforward what we're looking for. And those can be really kind of easy. And by the way, again, we'll test that. We'll definitely show some examples of that. And then finally, we will share two scripts. I'm going to build one and have it available for our archive session in terms of a Market Watch column. I'm definitely going to have that. So that will be in there. But I wanted to get one for a scan in there as well. One of those for the linear regression. Okay. Well, that was just kind of some background. I think that can help to just kind of pause and look and think about what you were trying to do. And then, hey, how were you able to do it? Is it doable? Can it meet the goal? Things like that. All right, well, let's do this. I am looking at a grid, but that's not the grid I want to look at. First off, we're going to start with sectors. I want to break this down bigger picture to kind of give you guys a sense of what I was looking at when we went through this. Now, I've just created this. You probably maybe not have seen this before. I share this within the other classes that I do teach. But with this sector grid, let's just go ahead and we will detach it and make it just a wee bit bigger, get that stuff off the top. It's got all 11 sectors of the S&P 500. Now, any one of these sectors can have quite a few companies in it. Remember, this is collectively the 500. So as we spread these stocks out, I should say stocks are spread out amongst these different sectors. We're fitting roughly 500 companies. I believe it's the S&P 503 right now, but we're putting those into 11 kind of compartments, as you might see, different areas, and they all seem to be up on the day, which was different from yesterday, clearly, right? Everything seems to be up. I've got this in here. If you want this, let me know. I'll throw it in the chat, and you guys can have this. But this is not a script or anything. This is just simply a grid. All right. So having said that, these are tricky because, as we look at, let's say, for example, healthcare. If we looked at healthcare, it's better in the S&P 500, but there are some companies in here that are kind of a mix within healthcare. Clearly, there's like 5 different industries within healthcare. And what's really leading the group that I'm interested in is what I wanted to talk about, because that has more reference probably than just the broad sector. Now, it's okay to start with the broad sector. As a matter of fact, that's what we do a lot, right? In this class, when we'll do like a top-down analysis. Sometimes we'll look at markets, sectors, industries, and finally companies. We're trying to look at a mini sector or a really, really kind of closely knit basket of stocks that mirror the ones that we're looking at. For example, let me throw it out there to you. There are semiconductor stocks out there, right? There are semiconductor AI stocks, and there are semiconductor stocks. Now, you're going to be hard-pressed to just go out there and throw out let's say, just like a symbol over here, and to make that work. It's going to be tricky to do. So let's just say MRVL, for example, or NVIDIA, whatever. MRVL, there we go. Marvell. And the group had a run. It's isolated in a specific group on semiconductor, right? Different from, there may be some slight variations, but they could be closely knit. NVIDIA, right? AMD. All right. So, and another one, Intel, which has been kind of lagging, for example, right? Well, when we think about this, it's not Intel that's been moving. It's kind of outside of that closely knit basket of companies. It's the others that tend to be more highly correlated, actually. Now, there are some ETFs out there that you can find, but still, it's not up to what you want to do. And here I am and this happens sometimes when I'm on my grid, when I've detached it. I've got to go back to my regular one and just show you, for example, if I go over here into my Market Watch tab, and I look at this and I say, I'm visualizing what's happening, let's say within we'll choose a smaller basket, the NASDAQ 100. Now you can see over here, what's moving this group? What's the larger basket of companies? And that's what I'm focusing in on for what I want to see with the stock that I'm after. For example, what are the big, okay, 1 to 10 players out there? Maybe it's going to be more like 1 to 5 or 6 companies that are mostly closely related stock to what I'm in. And there's a good way to find the stock I'm interested in looking at. For example, well, you can do this. You can go over, let's say, for example, into the scan tab. And here is that upper, let's see, there's the S&P 500. And so we're going to be pulling up. This is just really basic, but just kind of highlight the different industries. So let's say, for example, we are looking at, I mentioned healthcare earlier. I also talked about semiconductors, but just to look at healthcare, that's the basket. When we say select all healthcare, that is the S&P 500 chart that we just looked at for the S&P 500 healthcare sector. It's comprised of this, which is all of these different industries. And by the way, look over here with me, sub-industries too. You get sub-industries. So there's a lot. And you have to kind of select and see which one's in here. And there might just be like 2 or 3 or 4 within a particular one of these groups. This is a sub-industry. And we got the industries over here. But maybe I'm looking for, specifically biotechnology. Now, biotechnology has a lot of companies in there that are losing money, like big time, right? And they have to issue shares of stock. And when you issue shares of stock, very, very likely in a lot of cases, that means an adjustment of share price lower. And that's just an additional risk. So utilizing what we have here too, we're going to use the screener, the stock hacker specifically. I'm just going to go down here and say, what's the PE ratio? The PE ratio, yeah, it does have an E in there. And if it's price divided by earnings, the denominator, if that denominator is minus, well, you're not going to have positive number over here. So I'm just going to say PE of 1 or higher. And what do we get? There you go. These are the companies within biotechnology that are actually profitable. Now, and I just mentioned this right now. I mean, they have a price to earnings ratio, meaning they have earnings. Over the trailing 12 months, the TTM of earnings is going to show up with a PE ratio. So we've got it there. Okay, we got it in place. Now, this is a tight-knit basket of stocks. Now, these stocks probably move more closely than others that are not making money, for example. And clearly more closely than those over here, now that I've intersected that, but let's go right over into healthcare. Healthcare technology. Now remember, that's part of this guy over here. Oh, hang on a second. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to unlink this. I was hoping that would stay on there. I'm just going to go back to my grid real quick, folks. There we go. There's the clean, no, not that one. Sector grid. Yeah, there we go. So over this time frame, we're looking right here. That's the entire group of industries and sectors, right? We've isolated that down. Let's just minimize that again. And we've highlighted a specific group. If this group has good, potentially fundamentals, and you see some strength, well, you're going to see the line of that chart obviously strong. And that could be a great reference when you're looking at an individual stock chart. So if I'm looking at a chart over here, and let's just say, we'll go back to a different one here, and I'm going to go back over into this and just say, okay, so what do we have? INCY. I haven't looked at that one. Wow. Here it is. Insight. Here is INCY. Now, how has this whole entire group been doing? And how has it been doing? And I want to see this in reference to the chart that I'm looking at on the screen. Like if I just want to look at it just individually. So I'm looking at INCY, but what has the sector been doing? What about those other 6 stocks? Where are they doing? Is the trend up? Where are the support and resistance levels there? So that then you can kind of have a baseline, so to speak, as to where the support might be. Okay, I'm down here on Insight. There does, we bounced off a little bit of support there. There were prior highs. We call that resistance over here. Support again. Okay, great. We have it on the stock chart. But what about what's really been moving in that group? What about those other 5 companies in there? Same thing holds true with semiconductors. We're looking at, maybe another stock like ON Semiconductor. What does that look like And how are the other stocks in the sector doing? If ON's consolidating and they've just begun to break out, the sector itself, for example, I'll just do a quick switch over here since we did talk about semis as well. ON has been going down, but then we saw the collective group, let's just say, going, it's kind of been consolidating and it's really breaking up higher here. I don't know if this is profitable or not. We could look into it. Obviously you could look into that and see what's happening, but that would be a good one to maybe, you could consider what the sector's doing. It could be of interest. You could say, well, gosh, the sector's showing strength. It might be the lagger within my small group, the laggard, but it might still be one of interest. I'm going to watch the earnings. I'm going to dive into it a little bit more because maybe it's undervalued. Okay. You're not going to get that. So you will not get that with this sector over here necessarily. It's not going to be as sharp. Now, if the whole sector's breaking out, that could be a positive too. But I wanted to break it down so that we can control what stocks we want to view, like in a mini type sector, relative to the stock that we see on the screen. That was the whole goal of this. Okay, so I'm gonna pull that up right now and I'll show you what we've got thus far on it. Okay, just a quick look at time and I'll show you what we've got. Oh, let's see the grid link. Absolutely. Let me just do that real quick. Just caught that at the corner of my eye, and I'll go up here. I'll share that. Grid, sector grid right there. Okay, so I'll throw that in right now into the chat. Okay, so just an easy way, and you can build on that too, but quick way to see all those sectors and get a sense of what's moving, no doubt. Okay, all right, so let me do this first. I'm going to clean this off, and then I'm going to show you what we've kind of got going in here. And then we're going to expand this out a little bit into volume profile and show you kind of, guys, where I've been looking into this a little bit. But there's kind of okay, we got volume at the bottom. That's fine. Let's just go over here now. And I'm going to keep this open. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in, let's look at, for example, what do we have over there? We had in Insight. I want to see how this was doing. Insight as the baseline stock over a 1 year's time frame. Now we can just come over here because we got the tool right there. We can see all these other ones. We got Amgen, some we've seen before, AbbVie, Gilead, Biogen, Regeneron, several. I'm going to add each of those in here, but I've got to do this through just a simple script. I've just named this mini sector right here. I'm going to show you how it works, what it looks like, but it opens this up so we can visually see this at the same time. Now, again, is it a simple indicator? It's fairly simple. I'm just combining those together, but you see how I've kind of built that around what I want to get from the sector. I made sure we went through and we saw that, right? Because you might be saying, I think this sector could be strong, or at least this basket of companies. I called it mini sector because, it's really isolated. It's actually kind of sub-industry. I should maybe many sub-industries. Mini sector was easier to state, but there you go. And so we're going to plot in these symbols. I've got 1 through 10 that we can throw in here. Okay, and you've got some little color diagrams you could put down below, whatever the case might be. And we're just going to compare that against a few of these. I don't need to do all of them, but this will give you the point. So here is, let's go Amgen. Click that over. We'll do Biogen. And we had Gilead. I'll just do 3 for now. That's fine. Okay, so there's Gilead. Yeah, and I click through those. And so I've added those in. I'm going to go ahead and just click add. You can put in whatever color you want, style, whatever the plots you want down below. And so I'm just adding this, but I've also got the company I wanted to compare that with at the top of the screen. That is Insight Pharmaceutical. I'm going to put that on. Okay, so this is the difference. Now, the bigger this becomes, the more difficult it can be to kind of see. I'll go full screen here. But you can, we're adding in many more companies combined together, and that's just going to be worth more. Now, here's kind of the key point I've been trying to make this whole time. We did see actually the healthcare sector kind of bottoming a little bit. I wanted to see where this basket of stocks is relative to that trend on the general healthcare sector. Healthcare is kind of like up a little bit here, the whole sector, and we're just barely getting there right now. Now, if I were to draw in here a downward sloping trend line, think about what this is giving us here. We're saying, okay, the collective group is breaking out. How is my company that might be a laggard doing? It's not quite above the trend line. In fact, it's kind of at the bottom here. But if we do break out here, now you're getting the basket of companies. that could be moving. I've intentionally shown this because healthcare in general, biotech falling right into that category, has been traditionally, defensive in nature. I'll just put defense. Defense for sure. It's defensive in nature. So if prices drop, sometimes the biotech areas, sometimes, you're going to see consumer staples will be strong, some of those areas. But being able to have a basket of companies collectively and seeing what they're doing, like I said, this can help. And this is why fundamental analysts, I know that because that's a bit of my background, like to see what the whole group is doing. And now you've got, you've got 1 through 10 over here that you can examine and build your own sort of mini industry or sector to view side by side with your chart. Okay. Does anybody do this kind of top-down analysis? The second part of our discussion is going to be linear regression, and so I want to break down that is for sure. But this is an interesting enhancement because now you can side by side see what collectively those baskets are. Traditionally, I'll just say, and I think others will like to look at like 4 or 5 stocks within the group that are like the leaders of the group, and how is the company I'm looking at fitting in? How is it relatively moving relative to my sector? It's a consideration. Now I'm going to show you this over here too, because there are ways to do this. Now this is going to create its own kind of visual over here. Let me just take this off for a second, and in fact, I'll just quickly share it so you've got it. But this is just basic. We've been through some of these calculations in the past, but look how small it is. It's so simple, but it could be really, really helpful if you wanted to do top-down analysis on a mini type sector. Okay, so let's just throw that in. Again, these scripts aren't guaranteed for timeliness or accuracy, but park that in the back of your mind right there. And by the way, those of you that are viewing this on the archive section, I'll have this in the description section under more, this right here, and you can create your own visuals there. Now, there's something else we can do, and I wanted to add in here the volume profile. And I think many of you knew this, but some of you may not have. Let's just take the show study out for now. But if you come over here, you'll note that I had built, we do have the flexibility and the ability to create over here, like Apple plus NVIDIA plus Meta, looking at the Magnificent Seven or whatever the case is. If you just put the plus sign in here, you can create your own sort of candle chart on here. Now, that's helpful too. You could have a separate chart. You could have a chart right below it, or a chart side by side showing the chart that that you want to compare that against, and that's not too hard to do. You can still do it that way. The mini sector enables you to just go in and isolate without having to, do the plus this, plus that. It is kind of a little bit of pain to come in here. You got to highlight it, and you can't really quite zoom back all the way in this box. It's a little bit challenging to just type in over here. You got to go into the edit and kind of change that a little bit up top here too. So maybe not the full flexibility, but here's the point I was wanting to look at. Over here, you can go in and you can do something like this. Like say, for example, what did we have? We had Amgen plus Biogen plus Gilead. Okay, if I hit enter, that's the combination of everything together here. Now, the one thing you can do, although I did struggle, I tried to get this on my script. If some of you know how to do it, I'd love to hear. I mean, if you were able to figure out how to put the volume profile on the script I had, because I wanted to have the volume profile here. If you wanted to have this, I mean, this could be quite long if you were up to 10 on something like this, but you could still do it. You could come over here and then just go into something like a volume profile. Volume P is what it is to pop that on, which again will put all of the volume that you'd normally see off the bottom. I left that down here. It will put it on the side for us, right? And let me I narrow this down oftentimes just to like, I don't know, 5. This is going to be the value area percent around the point of control. So you'll notice that what we're doing here is we're still using some of the Thinkorswim features. There are ways to kind of adjust ThinkScript, but in this sense, we're just taking the basket of companies we're looking at and we're saying, okay, now we can take a look at volume profile, because this is really cool. It's collectively saying, remember that downward trend we were looking at? Yeah, well, this one's kind of a little bit longer, but you can see if there was a downward trend prices were coming up. It breaks the downward trend right here, right here. Well, this could be an interesting possible target right there at the point of control. That is the highest volume, right? Because this just takes collectively all this volume here. It's a great indicator, and it just plugs it over here so you can see what prices those came in at. But notice what we're doing here. This is really, I mean, it's kind of subtle. We're looking at the volume profile based upon a sector perspective on whatever sector we want. Okay. It's not necessarily a line on the same chart, and I do kind of like the lines on the same chart because then I can see divergence like I showed you earlier on Insight versus these three, Insight Pharmaceuticals. But because I like to kind of compare divergence specifically, but this is another way to actually use this as well. Here's a major volume node here too. So now we're looking at sector, mini sector volume using just Thinkorswim tools. The first part was kind of a ThinkScript. Second part's Thinkorswim tools. I want to show you both, and you had both, and maybe you prefer one over the other for sure. By the way, with that script that I'd shown you, we can still do it as candlesticks. I mean, we can make that into a candlestick format for sure as well. I just wanted to keep it as a line separate from the candles I was looking at. But hopefully collectively, this gives you some interesting tools to use as you're doing sector analysis. And maybe some areas that maybe you haven't thought of, and maybe it kind of triggers some thoughts in your mind like, hey, I might want to build a ThinkScript around this or that using volume profile or just a collective basket of similar securities. Okay. Any questions on that? Would showing a percent of price be better? Oh, yeah. Yeah. So you could do the percent, RG. You could do a percent. Now on this, I think we could, well, let's see. We could come over here. I haven't done that yet on this. Let's just see. I think this might just show percentages over here. The log scale. Yeah, it moves it up a little bit. It changes things a little bit. But yeah, you could certainly work with that too. But I'm going to kind of call this sort of a macro view. You know, it is sort of a macro volume profile in a sense. Macro in the sense of macro for the group you're looking at, you know, collectively. All right. Yeah, so Gail says, you know, hey, hedging a portfolio, it gives you a look at the basket of companies out there and how they're moving. For example, this is just one thing, Gazelle, I'd noticed over the years. You know, I think, you know, it's just, you can take a look at this. There's a lot of information on this out there you can read about too. But let's just say, for example, you've got a sector that's going higher, and the sector just slowly starts to round over and then makes lower lows and lower highs. This is one of the first things I'll take a look at is just like the fundamentals and just say, okay, what's happening here? Are we seeing growth rates slow down? Because generally that's the case. And if you've got a stock within that group that's doing one of these and going higher, you know, these breakdowns over here can be very, very interesting. We see the collective weakness. So, all right, let's do this. Let's go and let's flip completely into a different area and look more at more momentum type stuff, which is along the lines of what I had been discussing previously. And I've learned not to click on this and type in a symbol. So I'm just going to go over here and we'll go over here and we'll take a look at SPX. Okay, so SPX, S&P 500 index, you could see big bounce today. How are we doing relative to our linear regression channels, which can always be helpful if you're trading at all-time highs where you don't have, and we've got that situation. It doesn't happen all the time. I mean, it's happened, well, fairly recently quite a bit, but on stocks or index, this 50, I use the 50, and let's just go ahead and click on it right now. Linear regression 50% study is similar to linear regression channel 100%, with the only difference that the upper and lower lines are placed at a distance equal to half that used by the latter study. Now, I've been doing that because it's kind of been matching where we've been trading linear regression wise. And linear regression, again, takes prices over time, plots a line, and then has standard deviations above or below. Let's add it in right now. In fact, let's take off volume profile. Or now, I'll just go ahead and take the show study out. I'm going to show you this. Now, you've heard of this concept of reversion to the mean, okay? When we're looking at prices over time, they can get kind of a mean perspective. Where have prices been? This is a one-year time frame, S&P 500. They can be very, very helpful for mapping out exactly what you're saying here. The channels. When we get to the bottom of a channel, could there be a bounce? And lo and behold, we're right there. Now I'm loading up a 1-year time frame here. That's what I'm looking at here on my linear regression, because it's going to be plotting at that time frame. Hey, what were those most mean prices? So this is how it can work, is that if you get off that bottom, if you go below it, and then you trade up to the mean, that's a reversion to the mean. Now, if you break above the mean, which is our middle line right here, you might extend up to these highs as well. Okay, that's how some traders will use this, and that upper channel line can be helpful. I have shown over here. Let me just do this real quick. I've drawn in my own lines that are gone now for some reason, but if you take these levels and you can draw kind of your own lines, like right there, we saw a number of touch points here, through here, through here. Linear regression line can get us close. It gives us a sense of what those numbers are. What the market's doing might be slightly different, but over the 1-year time frame, you can see we're slowing down just a little bit around that trend. There's our dip. Will we make it back up to the top of one of these lines? Okay. What traders will look at is this bounce with the trend being up. So trend higher, right? So we got the trend on our side. Got the trend here. Trend is up. We want to build on that for sure. Coming below that lower channel line and breaking back up above it. That could be where some traders, well, I've read that that's what they look for, right? They look for that as being a possible, I'm just using a plus sign as a potential entry is what they're saying, right? So that could be a possible entry point. They could trade that up to the mean line. They could also trade that to the higher line. And we have a couple of those, right, to look at. So what I've done is I've just built a study here right in the scan tab. I'll load it up right now under linear regression. And there it is. It fits up on the bottom. I'm using the 50% line because it holds up quite well. Now I'm using the stock hacker here because I want us to get those stocks that have bounced below there, and within 2 days, gosh, that's a D. That's a D. 2 days, within 2 days, they have not only gone below that line, they are now up above the lower linear regression. That is that 50% of the standard deviation right there that we've been holding and we've been bouncing off. There's been some tendency. We did it again today. We've been talking about these in my other classes for about the last three and a half weeks or so, and it did bounce off that lower channel. Those are plotted out, kind of in advance there in many cases, but more data is being added to it over time. It's kind of adjusting as it goes, but that line was broken above. Now I want to see what individual stocks have done that. Let's say, for example, in the S&P 500, can it bounce with the market off those levels? Okay. Back to reversion to the mean. So I'm in the stock hacker. So the scan tab, stock hacker, got to be in stock hacker here. I'm going to go ahead and I've got the S&P 500. Let's go ahead and scan through that right now, and we'll take a look at it. Now we want to go in and we'll compare it and make sure that it is working. Okay, you can have all kinds of different indications up here, that you want as well. We've got implied volatility, beta, etc. on down the line. Shoot, we've even got dividend payout. I think we looked at that 1 week, right? Dividend payout? I thought so. Anyways, that might have been a script we looked at. CFG, what do we have here? CFG kind of towards the top. Okay, CFG was our linear regression. Let's just test it and make sure. This is a scan, so it does that. There you go. You can see it right there. Did it cross below that level? Yes. Is it slightly above there right now? Wow, 25 minutes left to go. We're still kind of slightly holding that, but it did give that trigger. Now, how has that linear regression line performed in the past? Folks, again, we got to revert back to this with the direction of the underlying trend. Key point. We've got to try to find those companies that are also trending higher. That's your upward trend. We've bounced off that a few times, right? In this channel. And, is this again? Will we come back up and revert to the mean? Reversion to the mean. That actually broke above the mean and we extended above our upper channel. But you can see we came back down. Yeah, well, we came back down again to this point. So will we see that? One of the key things you can talk about is the trend still up. The trend is up. Higher highs, higher lows. Let me get that sent out to you guys so you can utilize that. And I will have this, I don't have it yet, but I'm going to have it in the Market Watch tab as a column here too that we can look at. Okay. within the S&P 500, for example, or whatever it is you want to look at. You can just take a look at anything there. Let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and go over here, and we can take a look at performance too on the day, on the week, whatever the case is, and just see what has been performing over here. I guess it's updating. Yeah. Okay. Good. There we go. All right. So CFG is still down here. I just noticed that there was a little bit of a move there. All right. So what do we have right here? About 24 companies have gone below that linear regression channel, folks, and they've bounced back up. Will they go with the trend we're using and plotting, really a statistical analysis based upon just the standard deviation? Now, it doesn't have to. Obviously, trends turn down. But if it's been holding that line, maybe you could say there has been a history of it, so maybe it's of interest to look at. All right, let's look at the, it's a scan, so we could just scan through whatever we want to look at. Shoot, look at this. We could even do the Russell 2000. These are small cap stocks, right? Small cap stocks carry special risk with them, but how many across the Russell 2000 have been doing it? That might, oh, well, that's going to take a while. Stop. Okay, there we go, 40. Okay, that wasn't too bad, actually, to go through 2,000 companies. Remember, crossing below, but breaking above in the last 1 to 2 days. You notice CFG was the last 1 day. So we're keeping it kind of close to the bottom channel is the goal there. But you might recognize some of these stocks over here too, these equities and these equity holdings, right? And take a look at some of these. One thing too, this does not have, we could pull up one of these as an example. What do we have? Well, let's do the NASDAQ 100 and I'll show you something. And then I'll quickly just share this with you guys. But here we go. So there's the 100 right there. We only have 2. Okay. CMCSA, Comcast. CMC. And I don't remember if this is like a really good, this is a great example. Notice the linear regression line is going lower. Now we could easily, and we've done this before, we could have a script. We could add the script. We could add a secondary script here, just simply saying, we're above the 200-day moving average, which we're probably not above here on this one, maybe close to it, but the trend is not up. Collectively over a 1-year time frame, which is what this script looks at, 1-year time frame, we are slightly down. But is this doing what we said still with the downward sloping trend? Yes, it is doing that. So we're confirming what we talked about over here. We want to test this to the related goal and make sure that it is functioning with whatever one we choose. It should be. There we go. And then with this, you can enhance this to your technical analysis too. Not only is it trading within that statistical range, bouncing off above that lower channel line, but maybe there's some support down here, and it could be just a way to spot what's happening. Again, the key difference here is, you're breaking above the line. You're coming back up and you're breaking higher. And what does that mean? Well, there could be a lot of further investigations to look at, but I wanted to talk about that one because I think it just got me thinking about where the market was at and, taking a look at that. I think Adobe's been down for sure. So this is another one. So the only 2 we have, but you'll notice just right there. So the script should be working right there. Now, could we enhance this script? We can. I've left it open a little bit so you can look at a few details in terms of a breakout above this level. We can just change. And in fact, let's pull that up right now. I'll share it. Oh, yeah, time's flying here. Okay, always flies. It's class. All right, let's just share that. What am I doing? I'm not there. I'm looking at the chart. Let's see. I'm just going to share this right now. Share the scan query. Yeah, this one here. Okay. So again, not guaranteed for timeliness and accuracy. It just takes the data that's being plugged into the platform. As long as that data is clean, which, we've got good data, generally speaking, right? It should give us the right information, but just to highlight that as a side note. Okay, let's put this over here so you can take a look at it. And there you go. There is your linear regression off the bottom. I'm going to pull it up right now, and we're going to take a look at it here. What do we have? Let's see. Why is that not coming up? My other one. 1 second, folks. Just 1 second here. It's just giving me a bar, but it's not opening it. Did that, can anybody verify that that script did go through? If it works, that is. It's working on my side. I don't know if it's a demo account issue or not. I don't know about that one. That's interesting. I haven't just seen a bar show up, but that's okay. I'll have it. Well, it should be in there when you open it up yourself individually, and you can take a look at it here. So I've got different time frames and a few different things set in place, so you can kind of take a look at it. I did put in there specifically a 1-year time frame, but and that should show up, but it's there. Okay. All right. Now let's see. What else can I answer? I could try to pull that up here again, but let's see. Any questions? It looks like Brent did a great job. I appreciate it, Brent, answering those. Folks, today we looked at sort of a mini sector. Hopefully got some ideas flowing for you. We started off with that. I guess I'll just state, we looked at the linear regression since we're looking at it right now. Linear regression channel, talked about that because, hey, the market's been trading within a range as well. And that just kind of sparked my interest in this because, hey, it's a helpful idea for, higher resistance levels just by itself, possible resistance levels in the future, possibly, but also as a trading mechanism too. And again, you can have this. We can obviously make sure that we can look at a script or a scan that looks at prices coming off the top or breaking through the reversion to the mean, up or down as well. Whatever security we happen to be looking at. There's that CFG again right there. Okay, so still holding up, but you can see what we're referring to there. Okay, plotted out in time. So we talked about this clearly. We've got that. I'm going to have a Market Watch column for you to take a look at here in the description section when we're done. We also talked about clear that off for now, and we talked about our mini sector and creating a mini sector, a really mini industry, of what you want to look at and seeing what that chart looks like relative to the stock that you had in mind as well, that you're looking at. In fact, I'll pull that up one more time here, and we'll just replace this. That's relative to CFG. That doesn't tell us a lot. But look at, for example, couldn't you also have your same company in here, Amgen? You sure could. You could have Amgen in here that could be related. By the way, Amgen, a big mover in this particular security. You can see it's a little bit different. It was still making highs over here, but case in point, just to kind of wrap this up, but we were looking at these comparable on the same chart. So you can come in here and say, okay, look at this. Amgen making a similar high. Notice over here with my basket of very, very specific, very, very highly correlated biotech companies making a lower high. And that ties into that divergence that I was talking about earlier. See that? That can be equally, maybe even more useful than, let's say, an indicator showing divergence on Amgen down here itself. AMGN. Okay, that's the basket. That's the mini sector. We'll just call it MS for short. Okay. But a different way to view your holdings and maybe even support levels, reversals, trend line breaks, and just a trend breakdown in general, folks. So, all right. Well, that's what I had for you today. I think we're all set on time. Everybody have a fantastic weekend. Next go around, though, I've got like 2 or 3 topic requests that I'm going to address for sure, as well as, I'll add some additional content in there. But folks, great being with you today. And I look forward to future discussions with you. As always, take care. We'll see you.